preparing for davening, and places of davening. And most recently, we spoke about the importance of going to shul, of davening with the minyan. And most recently, we spoke about how a person walks into shul. That when a person walks into a shul, he should have a sense of awe upon him. We said a person is allowed to run to shul, even on Shabbos when one shouldn't be exercising. And although the sages say that running actually takes away a 500th of one's eyesight, but when they light the Shabbos candles, they restore it. Nonetheless, running to shul is a mitzvah. However, the moment you approach the synagogue, you should slow down and walk in slowly with a sense of awe and respect. Not sure if we mentioned over here that ideally a shul should actually have 2 doorways so that one could gradually, one of the reasons for this is so that one can gradually get into the mode, into the awe and spirit of the shul. We spoke about the praiseworthy act of putting on talis and tefillin before coming to shul. We said this is specifically in places in Jewish neighborhoods where there's wouldn't be any disrespect to the tefillin. Although it is worth mentioning that although some are particular about this, most have the custom of putting on the talis and tefillin after they come into shul. Okay, now today we're going to speak about what happens if you are not able to make it to shul. So what about davening at home? Okay. No, sorry. Sorry, just a minute. There we go. Okay. Okay. So we're up to section 12. If because of some emergency you cannot make it to shul or to the study hall or any other regular minyan, you should make an effort to gather 10 minyan to daven in your house together with the minyan. I remember hearing a story of somebody who was so particular about always davening with the minyan that he called 10 taxis and he told them to turn their meters on. And he asked, this was in Israel obviously, and asked them if they could stick around for 10 minutes and he'll pay for it. Obviously, they had no problem. They're charging him, but he got his minyan. He got the 10 taxi drivers there and they got their money. So that would be, an extreme level of dedication to a minyan. Okay, now what happens if you can't get a minyan together in your house? If this too is impossible, you should at least daven at the same time that the community is davening, because that is a time of divine favor. It's an eis ratzon. Similarly, if you live in a place where there is no minyan, you should daven at the time that the congregations daven in the city. However, if you need to study Torah or do work, which one shouldn't be doing before davening, then rather daven earlier than wait for the minyan. So if you are davening by yourself, then daven together with the minyan. However, if there are other activities that you want to do, don't do anything before davening, rather daven before the time of the minyan. That was section 12. Okay. Now, similarly, if you're weak or you find it difficult to wait until the community's prayers, or until they finish davening before eating,
can I
you're
ask
allowed
you?
to. Yes.
Sorry, the minyan, does it have to be Jewish people? It can be anybody.
No, so a minyan is specifically 10 Jewish men over the age of 13 or more.
Okay.
There's a certain holiness which is present when 10 Jewish people congregate. Interestingly, the source for minyan was actually from a negative encounter. It was when Moshe sent spies into the land of Israel, and 10 of them came back with a terrible report. And the Torah refers to them as an Ada, as a congregation. So This is a source in the Torah for what the rabbis teach, that a minyan needs to have 10 people. So not always, not any 10 Jews meeting together means that the discussions are necessarily the best. But nonetheless, just the fact that they are in each other's vicinity creates a certain holiness which helps our prayers go up to heaven. Okay.
Thanks.
So now we're talking about in section 13.
נראה יצא טוב.
Pardon?
נראה יצא טוב. From the bad thing came the minyan, but it's good.
Yeah, from something not good, something positive came out. So he's saying if somebody will have a difficult time waiting till the minyan is over to eat, then he is allowed to daven earlier at home and then eat. However, it is only in your home that you're allowed to daven before the minyan. If you're coming to shul, where there is a minyan, you're not allowed to run ahead and daven before the minyan. Even if you want to leave before the minyan starts, it's forbidden. Because obviously it would be like a sign of disrespect to the minyan that you are running out just when they... actually, the reason is not so much about disrespect, but rather because a minyan is powerful and therefore not appropriate to forego the power and strength of a minyan just because you want to get out sooner. However, if you see that the minyan is being delayed and the time of davening might pass, then you would be allowed to daven. Similarly, if you're not feeling well, you would be able to daven ahead. In all these scenarios, it's clear that you're davening simply because of the difficult circumstances that you're dealing with. So that was as far as davening before the community. In summary, if a person is not able to, for whatever reason, wait until the minyan, then they should actually rather daven at home than daven in shul and leave early. However, if they are at shul and they're not feeling well, then there would not be a problem with that. Okay, what about multiple services? So at the end, it's going to say it's fine, but it's interesting to hear the reasons of why some communities say that it's a problem. So some authorities maintain that if one minyan davened in the shul and another minyan shows up, in Israel, they call them the minyan factories. You have these shulls where from the moment, the earliest possible time to daven for the next 4 hours, there's minyanim running one right after the other. Sometimes they actually have multiple rooms. So literally every 15 minutes, you could catch a minyan that starts at the time that you'd like. So he says, if you have 2 minyanim in the same shul, a second minyan shouldn't start while people from the first minyan are still there. Why? Because when you go and you start leading the second minyan, it may be interpreted that you thought that the first minyan didn't work, and therefore you needed to make another minyan to correct the failure of the first minyan. Obviously, once everybody's left, then it's a new crowd. But if some of the original people are still there, they would possibly think that you think that the minyan needed to be redone. Similarly, if the first minyan took out a Torah and read from it, the second minyan should not take out a Torah. Again, for the same reason, it's suggested that people might think there was something wrong with the first Torah. They might think that maybe people around might think that the first Torah you thought was not kosher, which would obviously be an affront to the Torah, and that's why you took out a second Torah. Even if it was the same Torah, people might not realize that it was the same Torah. However, the bottom line is that in many communities, we are not worrisome about this, and for this you follow the minhag. I think in today's times, there's no concern of such an affront, and therefore there would be nothing wrong with starting a second minyan, even while the first minyan are still present. Finally, and this is quite an interesting one, as far as fines, the inhabitants of a city can force each other to build a shul or beis medrash, a study hall, and to buy books in which to study. In a place where there's no minyan, the people can force each other by imposing fines to assemble regularly for a minyan. Can you imagine if the newsletter came out and said that anybody who doesn't show up for this minyan will be receiving a fine? Obviously, under today's time, that's something that would not be very practical, but this indicates how this is an absolute necessity to the extent that in certain contexts, fines would be given to people for not showing up to make the minyan, which is an essential service. Even those who are preoccupied with Torah study and will be prevented from studying Torah can be forced to attend the minyan because there's a time for study and a time for davening. Now, I spoke about it being an essential service. You might wonder then, why is it that under these conditions of COVID, the shul is still closed? The answer is because as much of an essential service as it is, Torah law believes that when there's danger to life, that supersedes everything, except for 3 mitzvahs. This is not one of them. So it certainly is an absolute essential service at minyan, but we don't want to put people's lives in danger, and that's why the shuls have not yet opened until they have a structure in place. We've concluded section number 12, and so let us take a look at section number 13. Any questions on 12? No, moving on to section 13. Okay, so in the general picture, we finished the first section of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which is about starting the day. We've moved on to davening. We spoke about preparing one's body and place for davening. And now we move on to the holiness of a shul and beis medrash. And then from there, we go on to all the different sections of the davening and how we go about them. Okay, chapter 12. The sanctity of a shul and beis medrash, meaning a learning center, a Torah learning center, is very great. And we are commanded to fear the one who dwells in them. Blessed be his name, Hashem. As it is written, revere my sanctuary. The synagogue and the beis medrash are also called sanctuaries. In other words, they're actually called mini temples. It's like the Beis Hamikdash, like the temple in Jerusalem. Every shul and every learning center, every beis medrash is a mini temple. And it is explained that this refers to the synagogues and the Bate Medrash. Therefore, it is forbidden to engage in idle talk or to make calculations, except those that are associated with a mitzvah, such as the calculations of tzedakah or the like. Such places must be treated with respect. They must be kept meticulously clean. Candles should be lit, meaning they should be well lit. I think today the equivalent would be lights. And interestingly, because of the respect and awe that we have for the shul, one should not kiss one's small children there. Actually, in the original Shulchan Aruch, I don't think it says small children. I think it says one shouldn't kiss one's children in shul because it is not proper to demonstrate any other love except the love of Hashem, blessed be his name. Now, we're talking about in the actual room that you daven. I don't believe there would be any issue with kissing one's child in the corridors, and certainly then it would be most appropriate. But there's a time for everything, as we mentioned at the end of the previous section. And when in shul, our focus needs to be on our love for Hashem. But that is an interesting law about not kissing one's children. Included in that is also grandchildren. It doesn't say about hugging, and it's only one's own children. So if you have a good friend that you haven't seen in a while, there's no social distancing, you certainly can go ahead and give him a hug and a kiss and whatever you want, because we're talking specifically about one's own child. That's where this exists, because there's such an intense love for a child, and we say that in shul the focus needs to be on Hashem. Yes, Mark?
What would the difference be between your children and somebody else's children? Was there why was it distinguished between the two? One you're allowed and one you're not?
So I need to look into that. I don't remember offhand, but I think it's because maybe when it's to somebody else, I don't know. I'm going to give a suggestion and I'll have to come back to you. But maybe it's because when it comes to someone else, you're simply doing the mitzvah of loving your fellow Jew. But I don't know. I don't want to make anything up. Yeah, but when it comes to one's own children, it's more considered like one's very own self. It's very important to kiss one's children. But as I said, there's a place for everything. I know it's a sensitive one, this one over here, but that's what the Torah tells us. So I'll have
the Torah says also, "V'ahavta l'recha kamocha."
Correct.
You love your fellow the same way, so it's a mitzvah actually.
Correct. But Mark's saying it's also important to show affection to one's children, but nonetheless, a distinction is drawn. Okay, so that was as far as awe and respect. As far as cleanliness, Before entering, you should wipe the mud off your shoes, and you should be careful that there's no dirt on your person or on your clothing, meaning you need to make sure to keep the place clean and respectful. It is permissible to spit if one has to, but this should immediately be rubbed away with one's feet. In fact, some communities have the custom to actually spit at a certain place in davening where they speak about idolaters, and they don't want to have any benefit from saliva in their mouth that was used speaking about such idolatry, although that is not the regular Ashkenazi custom. And as we said, it would need to be cleaned. Okay, not for shelter. You should not enter into the summer in the summer in order to find shelter from the heat or refuge from the rain. You're allowed to enter in to call a friend, but you need to do one of four things. Either you need to say a few verses, or learn something, or make a prayer, or to listen to somebody else learning, I guess it's 5, or to at least sit down for a few minutes, because even sitting in a shul, even if you don't say a word, people complain about people coming into shul and not saying a word. Even just walking into shul and sitting there without saying anything is already considered something special. So as long as you do one of those 5 things, then that's fine. But one shouldn't walk into a shul for personal benefit, just to enjoy the aircon. Okay. As far as eating and sleeping, it is forbidden to eat or drink or sleep in a holy place, even if it is a short nap. So that might be a tough one for the droshes. However, for the sake of a mitzvah, it's allowed. For example, people who spend the whole Yom Kippur in shul and they actually don't even leave the shul would be allowed to put their head down to sleep for the night. But they shouldn't do that in front of the Aron Kodesh. Similarly, if you're eating for the sake of a mitzvah, provided that there's no drunkenness, it's allowed. Similarly, those people that study all day would be allowed to eat there as well, because that's just where they are hanging out. And finally, point number 5, and with that we conclude section 13. If you are building a shul, it is worth consulting with a rabbinic authority, because there are many details in how a shul should be constructed, but he has decided to leave that out of the kitzur, since most of us are not building a shul just yet. Thank you for joining us, and wishing you a wonderful week.
Thank you. All the best to all.